Welcome back, everybody. Let's continue in our series on Talmud Eser Sefirot. We are in Chelek Aleph, Perek Aleph, Inyan Gimel, Ot Nun. And I'm proud to say that we will be finishing Ot Nun in this class. Next week, we're going to move on to Ot Samich, number 60, which is on the topic of the distancing of the light from the central point of Ein Sof. When the light distances itself from the central point of Ein Sof, that's what the Tzimtzum is. It's the withdrawal of Or Ein Sof from Nekudah Emtzait, which is the Malchut Shel Ein Sof. But before we get there, let's conclude our discussion on the definition of Nekudah Emtzait. First, we have to understand what the Nekudah Emtzait is. And I just gave it away, and I have given it away in the previous classes, that this is another nickname for the Malchut of Ein Sof. She's otherwise known as the Nekudah Emtzait, the center point or the middle point that exists within the Or Ein Sof, the endless light, which is a reality that precedes the contraction. The Or Ein Sof is the Metziut before the Tzimtzum, endless light. There was no lack or absence in any way, shape, or form. And yet there was also no revelation of a vessel. Yet the Mekubalim explained that there was a Malchut of Ein Sof. That means that there was a Kli, because Malchut is a vessel, that existed in the Ein Sof, but it was one with the upper light. This unity between the light and the Malchut of Ein Sof is above human comprehension. It's a paradox because these two are necessarily different. One of them is the desire to give, the other one is the desire to receive. Yet the Chachamim swear to us that these two were one before the Tzimtzum. Again, above human understanding. So we don't want to break our minds, therefore we take it as the sages give it, until one day we will be able to experience this and know it for ourselves. Because the Arizal says that this is something that can be known. He says, Da. He says you should know that before the emanated were emanated and the created were created, there was an upper simple light that filled all of reality. There was no vacant space, such as an empty air or a void. But everything was one simple light, completely even, where there was no beginning and no end, called the Or Ein Sof, the endless light. והנה בחינה ד' זו היא הנקראת נקודה אמצעית שבאין סוף ברוך הוא. And another name for this Malchut of Ein Sof, or Nekudah Emtzait, is Bechina Dalid Shel Ein Sof. Why? Because Bechina Dalid is Malchut. Last class, or 2 classes ago, we learned that Bechina Aleph is Chochmah, Bechina Bet is Bina, Bechina Gimel is Zeir Anpin, and Bechina Dalid is Malchut, which corresponds to the complete desire to receive of an emanated being. We also spoke last week about how these 4 phases are the 4 stages of desire to receive as it develops within the emanated being. Every Ne'etzal has these 4 stages by necessity. Chochmah, Bina, Zeir Anpin, and Malchut. We said that phase 1 and phase 3 are both expansions of light. Phase 1, Chochmah, is the expansion of the light of Chochmah, while phase 3 is the expansion of the light of Chasadim. And phase 2 and 4 are strengthenings or awakenings, called Hitkabrut. Phase 2 is Hitkabrut Aleph, the awakening of the desire to give, which initiates the drawing down of the light of Chasadim. And phase 4 is Malchut, which is the awakening of the desire to receive the light of Chochmah in a revealed manner. So 2 expansions and 2 strengthenings or awakenings. Phase 1 and phase 3 are male because they represent giving, while phase 2 and phase 4 represent the female because they are receiving. This dynamic exists all throughout the creation and all throughout nature, where there is always a force of giving and receiving. A man represents the giver in the relationship, while a female represents the receiver. That doesn't mean that the man can't ever receive or that the woman can't ever give. No. A woman is both, because she can give birth to a child. Thus, she has the role of a receiver, meaning she has to receive the sperm from her husband, but she also is a giver because she takes that sperm and creates a child out of it. And the man, although he's a giver, is also a receiver because from the wife, he gets kids. So anyway, the Bechina Dalid of Ein Sof is the Nekudah Emtzait, which performs the Tzimtzum. The Aleha Kiyuvan Harav Be'amrot Samsam et Atzmo Benekudah Emtzait Asher Bo. And this is what the Arizal was intending when he said that the Ein Sof contracted himself in his central point. He was referring to this Bechina Dalid, phase 4 of the desire to receive, which chose on her own volition and on her own knowledge to contract the light of God from within her. She reduced her desire to receive, or she restricted her desire to receive, which caused the withdrawal of the endless light from within her. That was the Tzimtzum. V'nikrat ken lihyoto kli kabbalah leor Ein Sof Baruch Hu. And the reason why it's called Bechina Dalid is because she acts as a kli kabbalah for the light of Ein Sof. As we know, Bechina Dalid represents Malchut, which is the kli for the light of Ein Sof. Shehu bli shi'ur ubli gavul klal. And we know that the light of Ein Sof is without measure and without limitation whatsoever. There is no limit or border or boundary to the light. It's limitless. It's the vessel that places boundaries around the light. It's the vessel that places limitations, not the light. As we know that the light is Ein Sof. The light is endless. There's no border or limitation from the light's point of view. But why is this Bechina Dalid called, in this language, why is it called Nekudah Emtzait? Because it is a vessel of reception for the light of Ein Sof, which is without measure and without boundary. Therefore, its existence is considered like a point, like a nekudah, within the center of that light. And that's why it's called Nekudah Emtzait. It's the central vessel, it's the container, it's the central issue of the Ein Sof. That's the function of the Malchut of Ein Sof. She is a vessel of reception for the endless light of God. And therefore she is regarded like a point in the pinimiyut of the Ein Sof, in the center of the Ein Sof. V'ha'or mesavav ota v'dabuk ba saviv zaviv ad ein shiur. And the light surrounds her and cleaves to it endlessly. This is the state of union before the Tzimtzum. She's like a point within and in the center of the light, and the light surrounds it and adheres to it endlessly, because it is an immeasurable relationship. There is no way to measure the relationship. It's endless. כי רק באופן זה ייתכן שתחזיק אור עליון בלי מידה ובלי שיעור כלל. Because it is only in this way that she is able to hold the upper light without measure and without limit whatsoever. מה שאין כן בכלי הקבלה שמאחר הצמצום ולמטה. What is not so with regards to the vessels of reception that come after the tzimtzum. The vessels of reception, the ke'ilim of the lower ne'etzalim, which we know come after the tzimtzum, are not able to hold the upper light without measure and without limitation. Rather, they are bound by limitation. The malchut that exists in the Ein Sof before the tzimtzum holds the light of Ein Sof without measure and without limitation. But the vessels of reception that come after the tzimtzum can only hold the light to a certain extent, according to the measure of their aviyut. That is the creation that didn't exist before the tzimtzum. What was the new creation that didn't exist before the tzimtzum? The concept of ratzon lekabel, in the sense that there is a border or a limitation to this desire. The ratzon that exists before the tzimtzum is unlimited. It can't even be discerned. It is so one with the upper light that it is imperceivable. It is unrecognizable in that realm. But in the lower ne'etzalim, their vessels of reception, machazikim oram, hold their light, bepinimyutam, in their innermost space, v'tochiyutam, and in their tochiyut, in the midst of their being. Klomar, shedafnot hakelim shehusto dalad bechinot shebahem hema osim gevul umida al or shebetocham, wherein which the four phases of the lower ne'etzalim are the walls or the inner structure of the kli. They determine how much or that the kli can hold. So in the lower tachtonim, the four bechinot of every ne'etzal after the tzimtzum creates boundaries and limitations that the light can dwell in a measured way, according to the aviyut of that desire. The aviyut of the kli represents the ratzon lekabel, the light of God, in a godly way. It's not receiving for the self alone. It's receiving the light in a godly way, which limits its ability to hold infinite light. Even though it's a godly desire, the mere fact that it is the revelation of the desire to receive, that itself is a limitation. It demonstrates a limitation in holding the infinite light. The greater the aviyut is, the more that the vessel creates boundaries on the light that it holds. The lower the aviyut, that means it's more zach. The more refined the type of light that that kli is able to contain. But the greater the aviyut, that it is a lower degree of light, this is the difference between zakut and aviyut. Thinness of desire and thickness of desire. Those ke'ilim that are located in the higher structures in the sefirot are more zach, while those that are lower in the 10 sefirot are considered to be more av. But in any case, the more aviyut that a certain vessel has, that means that the more boundaries that it has, it places around the light that it holds. Shisham ha'or v'hakli vehu mipnei ha'aviyut shebekelim. The reason for the boundaries that exist with relation to the vessels that come after the tzimtzum is because of the aviyut that exists within them. As will be explained below. And this is not so in the Ein Sof, may he be blessed. Because there, in the Ein Sof, the light and the vessel are in simple unity. Achdut hapashuta. Besod hu shmo echad. In the secret of him and his name are one, as we've explained. And if you want to learn more about that, go to Ot Lamed. One of our previous videos when we were on Ot Lamed, I can pin it to this video on the top if you want to go learn more about this unity that existed between the upper light and the Malchut of Ein Sof, then check that out. But ve'al ken ein hakli magbil et haor shemechazik klal. Therefore, the vessel does not limit that light whatsoever. Malchut of Ein Sof holds the Or Ein Sof without any limitation. Ve'al ken ha'or shebo hu bebechinat Ein Sof. And it is for this reason that the light that exists within the Malchut of Ein Sof is considered to be Ein Sof. Ve'hine nitba'er heitev sod ha'nekudah Emtzait shebe'Ein Sof baruch hu. Behold, it has been explained well, the secret of the Nekudah Emtzait that exists within the Ein Sof. שאין המדובר חס ושלום בבחינת מקום ושטח גשמי בשיעורים מוכסים. And God forbid you should think that we are referring to a physical central point or a physical space or area that is containing or holding the light. It's not a physical concept. We're talking about a spiritual idea. אלא בחינת הדלת haklalit be'Ein Sof nekudah kan. Rather, this fourth phase that is incorporated within the Ein Sof, mechuneh ken al shem achduta hapashuta im haor ha'elyon kemovar, is named this. It's called the Bechinat Dalit of Ein Sof after its simple unity with the upper light. The reason why it's called Malchut of Ein Sof, or Bechinat Dalit of Ein Sof, or Nekudah Emtzait of Ein Sof, is to specify that this is a Kli of Kabbalah that doesn't have any aviyut, that doesn't have any separation in form from the light, because if there was a revelation of aviyut, then that means automatically it would be distanced and separated from the upper light, because difference brings distance. But the fact that the sages are telling us that this is a malchut that is one with the upper light implies that this malchut does not have any apparent distinction with the upper light. This is a foundational principle. If you don't understand this, then you don't understand what the Ein Sof is. Ein Sof is a realm where there is no revelation of anything besides the endless light of God in its full measure and glory, which means Ein Sof. Endless. No limitations. No boundaries whatsoever. ודבר הצמצום הנעשה בנקודה האמצעית הזאת כבר נתבאר לעיל בעוד מם. And the concept of the tzimtzum that occurred in the Nekudah Emtzait has already been explained in Ot Mem. Ot Mem is a topic that we've talked about in a previous class, where we discussed the meaning of tzimtzum, which is, to remind you, the reduction of the Malchut of Ein Sof from the Bechinat Dalit of receiving. She reduced her desire to receive by restricting it, and that caused the withdrawal of the light of Hashem from within her. Because whenever she restricted her desire to receive, that caused a difference in form to appear. It became apparent that this Malchut of Ein Sof has nothing in common with the upper light. That only became apparent after the Tzimtzum. And because of this change in form, the light of Hashem, the light of Ein Sof, was forced, had no choice but to depart from the Malchut of Ein Sof. Because the light of Ein Sof does not inhabit a vessel that is different from the light. Only a vessel that is similar to the light is capable of receiving it. And that's why the Malchut of Ein Sof was able to receive the light in an endless way before the Tzimtzum. But after the Tzimtzum, when it was apparent that she was different from the light had no choice but to depart from her and she surrounds her on all sides, which is what we're going to learn a little bit more in next week's class. Next week's class, we're going to learn about this exact Inyan, that the light that departed from her surrounded her. It surrounds around the edges of this Nekudah Emtzait, the sides around the central point. Similar to like a black hole. If you've ever seen a black hole, we know that the black hole is a vacancy. It's a vacuum in space and in time. But there's a ring of light that is around the black hole. It's called the event horizon. That's the last opportunity for the light to escape from the pulling force of the black hole. I'm not sure if that really checks out conceptually, but you get the idea. The light of Ein Sof withdrew from the middle, called central point of Ein Sof, called Bechinadah of Ein Sof, and it distanced itself to the sides around the central point. So tune in to next week's class to learn a little bit deeper of what that means. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next class.